Welcome back to Behind the Brim, where we go inside the mind of scratch golfers, club champions, and industry experts. Our goal is to uncover insights that'll help you lower your handicap and enjoy the game of golf even more. I'm your host, Cameron Lindsay, and I want to personally thank you for joining us for today's show. If you have any questions about anything you hear or just want to get in touch with us, please reach out at our Instagram, behindthebrim_golf, and we'd be happy to chat. Without any further ado, let's get to today's guest. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by the one and only Redford Bobbitt. He began playing his tournament golf at the age of 6, and before long, Red was recording wins and high finishes on the San Diego junior golf circuit. He attended Torrey Pines High School, where he represented one of the best golf teams in the state of California. A multiple course record holder with scores of, get this, 11 under 61 and 10 under 62, his talents caught the eyes of the coaches at UNLV, where he's recruited to play D1 college golf. Former UNLV Rebels include Adam Scott, Ryan Moore, Charlie Hoffman, and more recently, Taylor Montgomery and Kurt Kitayama, who Red roomed with in Vegas and won this year's Bay Hill Invitational. Post-college, he turned pro and took his skills on tour, where he won the first stage of Korn Ferry Q School and made it to second stage as well. And since then, he spent time caddying for Cejka and Taylor Montgomery, while also recording 2 wins on the major series of putting in Las Vegas. He's one of the most entertaining guys I know, currently playing some professional poker, among other things. Red, looking forward to getting after it today with you, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on here and get into some of this stuff that we've experienced over the few years.
Yeah, and for our listener, I was lucky enough to meet Red when I went to high school in California for a couple of years, and he kind of took me under his wing. I was a struggling high school player, and he showed me a few tips and tricks. And yeah, just been lucky to stay in touch with him ever since, and really learn from you along the way, man. So once again, thanks for joining us, and wanted to just kick things off with you. Like, you have a extensive history in the game. Tell our listeners, how'd you get introduced to the sport that we both love?
Yeah, so I actually grew up. I started my golf in Germany as a kid. My dad was a teacher over there, and he played a little bit on the Sunshine Tour in South Africa and on the European Tour. We moved to the States, shortly after when I was younger, and he just kind of pointed me in the right direction. And I was playing multiple sports. I was doing the basketball, the baseball, the golf, and there came a point, I don't know, I was 12 or so, and I wasn't very good at any of them. So I kind of had to make a decision, like, all right, where are we going with this? And I said, well, my dad's a golf instructor, so maybe not a bad idea to kind of go down that route. And yeah, just started playing locally there in the San Diego Junior Golf, and fortunately, was able to attend UNLV. Then I played 1 year at Arizona, turned pro, and been around a lot of great players, and I've had a lot of cool experiences. It's kind of shaped my entire life, basically. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, and I really do want to get into some of those experiences because, yeah, I know there's some entertaining content there for sure. But before we get there, before we sort of, take a blast from the past, I want to stick with the program a little bit and go through our standard report card section, because
for sure,
I think our listeners could really benefit from just learning about your golf game, because I didn't explain this in the intro, but you still boast a +4 handicap. You still shoot unbelievable golf scores. So it's not like you're out of the game by any means. So if you wouldn't mind, if we could just start by having you grade your game in the A through F in the 4 primary areas of driving, irons, short game, and putting, and then, like we talked about offline, we're just going to dive into the top two strengths of yours.
For sure. So we'll start with the driving. I would say that's the strength of my game. Recently, I've gotten quite a bit longer off the tee, just getting a little more into fitness and strength. I'll give that one an A. I can get the club speed into the mid 120s, ball speed 182, 83, which is obviously a huge advantage in a lot of ways, and generally hit it pretty straight. I keep it away from the left side, kind of hit a little cut. So I give that one an A. We'll give the irons, we'll give those a B-. Wouldn't say they're bad, but we get a little loose sometimes, the occasional miss here or there. Wedges, we're going to give a C. We get a lot of wedges into the green with the long drives. These things they take practice, and I don't really spend as much time as I used to or I'd like. And when you get those, 75, 68 yards in that range, it's a lot of muscle memory. And if you're not practicing or you don't have a good feel, I mean, you might hit 185, you might want to hit 155, So that just comes down to practicing. And current status with the putter, I'm going to give it D, which it's crazy because it used to be the MSOP that Cam mentioned is actually a putting tour that they ran in Las Vegas. And I was fortunate enough to win 2 of those. One of them was with Taylor Montgomery, as Cam mentioned, who's, in my opinion, the best putter in the world. He was my partner, so that was a nice partner to have. It helped a little bit. And then I won one on my own, which was a kind of a cool feat. That was back in 2017. But yeah, the putter's been kind of a bugaboo for me as of late. And, I've seen some psychologists to try and work on it. And, I play for a decent amount of money a lot of times. So I don't know if it's developed from being nervous or, the dollar signs or whatever it is, but I've seemed to struggle a bit with the putting. And I think it's definitely mental, because when Cam and I were growing up, I mean, I just would walk everything in. I just thought I was going to drain it all. And I still get on runs where I get hot and I start making everything. But then I get days where a 5-footer looks like climbing Everest. So it's Jekyll and Hyde for sure. But yeah, I would give, A for the driver. We're going to go B- on the iron, C+. Yes, the closer we get to the green, the worse I get. So we need a driving tour, driving in irons, and we'll be dialed in.
Well, it looks like you pumped up those biceps since I last saw you, so I'm not surprised to hear the ball speed's off the charts.
Yeah, a lot of frustration missing 3-footers. Get the curls going.
Exactly. Well, let's get into driving, Red, because even the last time I played with you, you were driving the ball incredibly well, and curious to just understand what are some of your keys to successful driving. Like when you're going through a checklist of how am I driving the ball successfully, or what do I look like to drive the ball successfully? Like what do you think those keys are for you?
So a lot of it, I think a really key component is a good pre-shot routine, and that I get a nice practice swing behind the ball, and I pick out a target, and I kind of point at it with my club. But when I'm driving it real good, I don't even really have to. I don't have to think that much. I'm just committing to making a hard swing at that target, and it sounds really simple. But yeah, I'm seeing the target, visualizing the kind of shot I want to hit, which I think is really important. Because I think a lot of people don't really have a shot shape they want to see. And for me, it's very straight to just maybe it bleeds a little bit right. And another really important thing for everyone is if you can eliminate one side of the course, and generally if you're right-handed, it would be the left side. And if you're left-handed, it would be the right side. You'll notice that a lot of the guys on tour, righties, they don't really ever miss the ball left, because when you hit it left, it lands and goes forever. So when I hit a bad one now, it's just like a little flare out to the right. We're in the right rough. We're in the right, whatever. It's not a big deal. When you hit that left one, it lands and rolls forever. I mean, this thing can go anywhere. So I see all these great players that I've played with. They don't miss it they have a one-way miss, and generally that is to the right side. So eliminating one side, when I know I'm driving it well, I'm never hitting it left. I can literally set up on a hole with out of bounds in the left rough, and it's like I just never going to hit it there. So eliminating that left side is when I know I'm feeling really good with the driver. And how I practice it, I don't practice much, but I just have so much confidence when I get on a tee box that I just feel good going up there and making a good swing and trusting myself to make that move. And like there's not much, it sounds dumb, but there's not much thinking involved besides doing your pre-shot and then committing to making a full swing at the target. I mean, I don't know if you have more questions. It sounds simple, but it's how I do it.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting you say that. Chan and I, we've spoken at length around how a lot of people overlook the importance of selecting targets and really making committed swings towards those targets. So this is exactly what we preach. And it does sound simple. You mentioned taking one side out of the golf course out of play. Is there a way that you do that, like to make sure that, because I know for me personally as a righty, like when the mist creeps in, sometimes it is that pull. It's a hot pull, and it always comes at the wrong time, and it can be a two-shot swing. Like, how do I go about making sure that shot creeps in less?
Some of it's technique for sure. Generally speaking, the drivers, the technology now, they're making them harder. I would really say if you're trying to learn to hit driver, you want to hit a bullet fade. That is like the gin shot. You look at Dustin Johnson, John Rahm, Max Homa. These guys fade the ball off the tee. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't draw your irons because that's fine, but if you put a gun to their head, they might not be able to draw it. Like literally, that's what I would say, because they know their ball is going to leak this way. So some of that's technique. The more up you hit on your driver, the more it'll want to fade. The harder it is to draw it. So, and if that's the technique I can give, it'd be that. So up, obviously, you're swinging up on it, not down, because the more down you hit, the more your path will kick out to the right, which causes that draw. So it's a lot of it's a technique thing, and it's just kind of trial and error, I think. And it's funny because in college, I generally played a little bit of a draw with my driver, but my coach was always scared of that shot because if you hit the left one, the miss is always way worse. It's a technique thing for sure, and it's just something you kind of have to practice. But I would say in a simple form is try and hit a cut with your driver. I'm not talking like a big banana, but just a ball that just falls right. So that would be my tip for the driver. And like you were saying, you're committing to the shot. You have to really just say, okay, this is the shot I want to hit. And there's times where I'll struggle a little bit with driver. I get the left to right wind going and it's hard for me to draw it. It's like, it's like, all right, I'm just going to have to set up, in the left trees and trust that the wind's going to move it and my little fade's going to move it also. And you see some of the pros too, they'll struggle with it too. And they get that left to right winds and they'll just leak it out way right. And a lot of times they just didn't commit to their swing. They didn't follow through. They didn't finish. And a lot of the speed, in my opinion, it comes from the weight and energy transfer. So you want a big turn. My left heel comes off the ground, like a Jack Nicklaus or, so a lot of the Sam Snead, those old school moves. And that creates a lot of the ground force. And that's where the speed is at. You watch like a Cameron Champ, he has that. You watch Bryson, all these guys that are long, they're really using the ground to create the power. So I'm loading up hard right, and then when I get to the top of my swing, all I'm thinking about is how hard and fast I can get onto my left foot. So that's where my speed comes from. Is I get here, and then as soon as I get to the top, I'm already going. If you watch Rahm, he's really good at it. He's almost going into his left side as his backswing is finished. And that creates that like whip motion. And that's where that speed is from. So, because the other way would be if you loaded up and then just kind of fell backwards. If you think about, I view it like throwing a baseball. You wouldn't just throw a baseball without loading into your right side or any ball at all, right? Mm-hmm. You would want to have some sort of stretching and movement. And it's the same with golf, and a lot of people just stay stagnant here. They get here and then they just go backwards.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of my speed, obviously there's the fitness aspect, try and get stronger. But I think just in a general, if you can use the ground more and really get into your left side, that's going to help create a little more speed if you're trying to do that. And then, the fade aspect, if you can get that shot shape down, it's money. I mean, I'll occasionally still hit one left. I mean, we're talking 1 out of 100, 1 out of 75.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a nice thing to have because I can just say, okay, left side, there's OB, it doesn't even matter. And I just trust my swing.
Yeah, I think that's, a bunch of good call outs there being, if you're going to hit the ball far, you need to generate some energy transfer. So you got to load up your right side if you're going to.
Yeah. And that's, one of my recent coaches, Joe Mayo, if anybody's, he goes by Trackman Maestro. He teaches Victor Hovland, Ryan Fox, a few other guys on tour. He's very knowledgeable. And when I first went to him at the end of my college career, Cam actually worked with this guy too. We did the stack and tilt years ago when we were in high school, and we were just very, very taught to stay neutral. And that's fine with your irons because you don't really want to get too far off the ball. But what Joe taught me was get that turn, get that left heel off the ground, because you have time with the driver to get it back into the ground and plant it and rotate it. So, yeah, that really changed. And even with my irons now, I still have a little bit of that weight shift and transfer. It just helps with the, you watch JT, he does the same thing. He gets that left heel off the ground just to create the ground force. So that's where the speed comes from. You look at a guy like Kitayama, one of my buddies that, I'm sure we'll get into. The guy is 5'7", 5'6", and ball speed 184, 185. He's using the ground and has that whip. So I think people that, let's say you swing 100 miles an hour and you think you're topped out, couple different moves here and there, you could get it to 108, 109, and that's an extra 20 yards, which is massive, and I've just gotten this little extra speed burst within the last 5-6 months, going from, 173, 74 to now the mid 180s, low 180s. It's a night and day difference. I mean, it's night and day. I mean, it's, instead of hitting 6 iron into a par 5, you have a wedge or a 9. Your dispersion pattern goes from out here, 40 feet average to 20. It's going to make golf a lot easier. And that's why you're seeing all these guys on tour, they all work out. They're all grinding in the gym. And, for the average golfer, you might not have time to do that or, be able to do an extensive workout routine, and that's fine. But if you can kind of at least work with what you got with the movement and the energy with the feet, then you can gain some speed for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what dynamic sport, when you're trying to do an explosive movement, do you stay flat-footed? Do you stay rocked in your center? Like, of course, if you're going to throw a ball hard, you're going to load up in your right side and you're going to unload it onto your front side.
Exactly. A baseball. I mean, that's why they have that big windup, and golf's no different. You watch the long drive hitters. I mean, they're just obviously going for speed, and then you have to learn to control how to hit it straight. But you'll slowly do that as you pick up speed. And another good drill for people, if you are trying to get speed, is literally just get on the range and just swing as hard as you can. Like literally, if that's what you're wanting to do, if you're looking for that speed, just practice swinging as hard as you can. The guy that I work with now, actually, on my swing, he's very close with Chris Como. It was Como is Bryson's instructor, Jason Day, a few other guys. But he was the one that really was Bryson's, when Bryson got his speed thing. He said he'd watch Bryson for 45 minutes, literally swing a driver as hard as he physically could. Because you don't know the gears that you have to gain, what you have in the tank. I mean, I swing 108 in college, and this is, 5-6 years ago. If you said to me, hey, you can swing 124, 125, I just laugh at you. I'd be like, no, I can't. There's no way. So I think what I'm trying to say is you have more in the tank that you don't even know about.
Take the governor off.
Tap into it. Yeah, you got to tap into it, And another little key element for really wanting to do it is the backswing. You can just make it a little bit longer at the top, and that gives a little bit more, not that you need to go John Daly, but the more you can get that thing, the width in the backswing, is the further you're going to hit it. So there's the speed aspect. If we're talking about accuracy, we want to focus on trying to eliminate the left side of the golf course and really committing to your shots.
So I want to. I mean, for the speed, it sounds like like we just said, you're taking the governor off. There's more freedom of movement. Like if someone's like the opposite of what you're describing to me, Red, sounds like somebody being really pinched in and narrow. Like they're pinching in their right elbow on their backswing. They're staying like really centered and stacked. Like that doesn't like their feet are glued to the ground. That's zero speed. So what you're saying is gotta have more freedom. Let your weight go, kind of let your heel go, let your arms and hands have a little more room at the top, and then you're gonna have more leverage to hit the ball farther.
And I'm not saying go out there and try and hit it 400 yards the first time, but get on the range, feel your body movement, the big shoulder turn. It's like, but if you're just stagnant on top of the ball, you can't. There's no speed there. You're not going to be able to. And this is coming from someone, like I said, I was 108 max in college. And obviously the fitness has helped. It has definitely been a factor, but I've also learned some little tricks for the speed as well, because I don't think I like I said, I didn't think I'd ever be this fast. And what's crazy is even at, I can get to 24, 25. I'm like, I think I can get it to 130,
That's
and
wild.
still hit it straight. And it's like, how good of a weapon is that to have? You get on a tee box and, it doesn't mean I'm going to play great. I mean, yesterday I hit one 370 on this par four. I have 50 yards. I make bogey. So like,
Yeah. It's no guarantee.
there's no guarantee, but it helps a ton. It's
Yeah.
like I said, you're hitting 9-iron or wedge into a par five versus a 6 or a 5. I mean, you look at the analytics, that is a massive difference. And
Huge.
if you look at the PGA Tour now, the average ball speed is like 71 or 72. The guys, the Zach Johnsons and the Kevin Kisners, they're starting to not exist. Like and if they do exist, they're not going to be a world beater. Like you look at all the top players, you look at a McIlroy, Zalatoris, Xander, Rahm. These guys are long. Like this is where the game is going. It is not the peanut shooters out there winning the majors. Like, don't get me wrong, it can still happen. You have guys like Tom Kim, who's 160s, 165. I don't never think he will dominate the game, just because he is at such a disadvantage off the tee. And yeah, obviously he's a little bit shorter, like shorter arms, different body type. Obviously, incredible player, but speed is where the game is going. And I just think it's such a valuable weapon and resource. And now all these trainers are getting so dialed in. Like Kurt was telling me, he hired some guy in November of last year, and he's like, dude, I've gained 3 miles an hour clubhead speed, which is, 7-8 yards, maybe even more, which to them, that's a lot.
Huge.
Huge. So.
And Red, even think about like, from our perspective, Chan and our perspective as the club player, like we look at around our clubs, and usually the best players of the club are the longest player. Like distance and ball striking usually equates to proficiency, like length off the tee, and then allows you to hit more greens, allows you to just shoot lower scores. It's a simple formula.
It just comes down to an 80-yard shot versus 120 yards. Like it's a massive difference. And I've gained, my putting hasn't been great, but off the tee, it's like, I mean, it's pretty hard to play bad when you're 337 right fairway every hole. I'm not saying I hit every fairway, but it's a pretty powerful weapon. Like I feel like, honestly, if I became a decent putter, I'd be like, man, maybe I need to give this another go. You know what I mean? So, and obviously the wedges, it's a huge weapon. Yeah. And it's something I haven't had. And now that I have it, I'm like, wow, this is pretty scary. So
I want to, before we move on to irons, I want to quickly, we've talked a lot about the distance, but you mentioned in college, you hit a little more of a draw, or you had that shot. And then there was a period there where you transitioned into, okay, now I'm hitting the fade. You mentioned tee it up a bit higher. So you're hitting it more on the upswing later in the arc. So now the pass going a bit left. What else did you do to like integrate this fade into your game? Because I think I'm at that point where I want to start hitting a little bit of a fade, but how did you go about doing that?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the path and the club face, right? So to hit the draw and the technology, I mean, there's so many different things you can do now. Like, could I get a driver that I could hook the crap out of? Of course I can. I just get one, you set up a weaker shaft. Like, there's all sorts of different things. And what's funny is the driver I'm playing now, it's this original sim. Like it's old. I mean, this is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And all of the new ones that I've gotten, because I just get hand-me-downs from my buddies, the Stealth Plus, Stealth, whatever, all of these new Sim 2, I've tried them all, and they all don't set up as good, right? I cut them. I literally slice the crap out of them. I don't know if it's the head weight or whatever it is. So how it transitioned, I mean, it's a little bit of technology, I think. They're trying to make these drivers not hook. They're like really fade bias, especially TaylorMade. And then it comes down to your swing. I had a very, from working with the stack and tilt guy years ago, I had a very in to out. My path was always way out to the right. So it was going to always create that draw ball flight, right? So to integrate the fade more is, okay, you want to try and hit up on it a little bit more, and you need your path to be a little bit more left. Because if you have a left path and you're hitting up on it, that ball is going to cut. Now, if you have a right path and you're hitting down on it, it's going to draw. Like it comes down to face to path ratio and how you're, hitting up. I think my numbers now, I might swing 2 or 3 left. And the other cool thing about the fade in terms of accuracy is, you watch all these great drivers. I think Rahm is probably the best driver in the world. McIlroy is close. They're very, very similar. But you get to the top and you can literally turn and unwind as hard as you want. And you know that ball is not going left, right? Whereas the draw, you have to be a little bit more underneath and stuck, and then you have to release it, right? So if it makes sense, you get to the top of your backswing, and like I said, I'm just trying to explode through the ball and rotate my body, right? Whereas the draw, like when I try to feel a draw, I feel like I have to stay closed, right, to keep that path going out to the right. So definitely. I think it comes down to face the path, hitting up on it. But I would say it's the rotation of the body. Like, so
it sounds like to me you're feeling like you're way more rotary from the top, so that you can 100%. Get that path going left. Versus if you're trying to hit it from the inside, you're not rotating as much. You're kind of flipping it later with your hands a little bit.
You're flipping it with your hands, yeah. And I think that's why all these guys hit the fade, because they can. They could literally get to the top and like, all right, I'm going to rotate and swing as hard as I can to the left, and it's just going to be a little squeeze fade. Gotcha. And you know that ball is never going to go left, like never. So
you need to make sure that the face stays open to the path, though. Like it's because of course if you rotate hard and your pass left and your face is left, and you hit the hot pull.
Yeah, you're hitting the called the devil ball, the left going left. That's a bad one. we don't like that one. Rory is one of the few guys, obviously incredible driver. He does play a little bit of a draw, but I mean, he's just a freak. Like he's just a freak. Like I've seen all these guys on tour. I've caddied, I've played with them. Very few of them hit right to left with the driver. Very few. And if it is, it's fractional. So I'd say 90% of the guys on tour are playing a fade. Maybe not like a big cut, but the ball just drifts to the right, So it comes down to your technique, right? It's a technique thing that you have to kind of practice and learn. And the greatest tool, I mean, if you can get access, is to, TrackMan, Flight Scope, Full Swing, any of those things. So you can start seeing what you're doing. You get instant feedback, right? It's like, okay, I just tried to do this and my path was still out to the right. Okay, I have to adjust it. And not that I tried to like make this different. It's just kind of happened naturally. But if I were to teach someone, get on a TrackMan, get on one of these devices and see where your numbers are. And then you can figure out, how am I going to change this? My dad teaches and he uses one of the Flight Scopes, and it's easy for him because the person's like, well, why did I just hook that, 40 yards? Like, well, your face is 7 degrees closed and you're past 8 right. What do you think's going to happen? It's just duck hook. Gone. It's just high, smash hook. So if you can get access, that'd be my biggest advice to some sort of, club, the Flight Scope, whatever it is, like I said, to track your swing. That's the best way you're going to fix it. And obviously you have an instructor as well. They can guide you the right way. If you're more of just like a feel person, it's like, okay, we'll just get the feeling going and see what the shot's doing. So
are you aiming up the left side of the fairway, peeling it off, or do you aim up the right and try to play a neutral ball, and if it peels to the right, it peels to the right?
It just depends on the hole, right? Like for me, I generally, when I say fade, like we're talking, it's just barely falling right. It's generally very, very straight, but
okay,
if there was a tendency for me, it would be for it to fall, like, because I don't want people to hear this and then think that they need to start coming over the top of it and wiping across it. Like we're talking a fraction of a cut, right? Because there's a difference between like a fade and a slice. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, is there holes where if the trouble's down the right, I will aim down the left and just try and I'll maybe just set up a little more open, like with my shoulders, and swing down that line. But there's a big difference between a fade and a slice, because the average golfer is going to think, oh, I just need to go more this way, more over the top and swing more left. It's like, okay, now your path's probably going too far left. And that's where you see the average golfer, they play the big banana slice, because they're just throwing their hands way over and cutting across it. Whereas a proficient driver, it's fractionally out to the left and they're still releasing the club. You want to still release the club, obviously, and hit the cut. It's like, it's the best shot in golf. There's no better shot that you can hit than the release fade.
And I think too, like a drill for those that don't have access to TrackMan, because not everybody has access to that. Like you could even throw just like an alignment stick as a
For sure.
start line out in front of you on the range, and just give yourself feedback like, hey, I just want to start this fractionally left of this stick, and have it just kind of cut back to land on the stick a little bit. Like, I'm just thinking about a drill for our listener.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And vice versa, if you wanted to draw it, I just think that shot, if you can master it, like I said, you don't, ideally you want it to be really, really straight, and just know that it's not going to go left. Like that's the perfect shot. But generally speaking, the great drivers, it either goes straight or it's just falling right. It's never going left. I obviously occasionally they might hit a toe ball, and you might see John Rime duck hook one, but you watch them on the TV this week, you'll just be like, wow, that they don't really hit that shot, because they want to eliminate one side of the course. And that would be my biggest takeaway. And back when I was hitting the draw in college, I would hit the hook for sure. And the hook, like I said, it lands and it rolls another 30 yards. When I hit a bad one now, it's just like kind of a little high cutting spinning ball. It's going to land 291 and roll 3 feet. Not this lands 290 and then rolls 40 yards. Because once it does that, now you're bringing on all sorts of things that are down the left side. So that'd be my biggest takeaway with driving. And I would say that is what I'm known for now. Is this guy is a really good driver of the ball, hits it long and hits it straight. So that's my take on it.
I love it, man. I think that's a good place to jump into irons. And similar question for you. Keys for successful iron play. What are you looking for when you're hitting an iron?
Well, there's shot shape, trajectory, getting the distance right, all those things. What you notice the guys are so good at on tour is they get pin high. And when I play with a lot of amateurs, or less, guys that aren't super skilled, is they don't know how far they hit the ball, and they don't know where the correct miss is. You could get a 5 handicap, and I could get his handicap down to a 1 or a 0 just by saying, hey, this, pin's on the left side of the green, you can't miss left, like figure out how we're going to keep it right of this pin. And another cool tidbit that I'll add for irons is one of my old coaches, he used to do Jason Day's 3D stuff, and he also kind of did his analytics. He won the Byron Nelson, I would have to look, maybe 2016, 15. It was years ago. And he aimed at 7 pins the entire week. Think about that. This guy was world number 1 at the time. This is the best golfer in the world. He aimed at 7 pins in 4 rounds and won the golf tournament.
That's insane.
So irons comes down to, like I said, trajectory, shot shape, and then just, picking the right target, being in the right place. Like, people don't realize if the pin's in the back and you can't go long and you're 137, hit your 130 club. It's okay to be short, because everyone wants to be perfect and everyone wants to hit the glory shot. So irons is like those couple things I said, but it's also more importantly is, the course management side to it. And the reason why these guys are so good on tour is they manage their irons and their shots so well. If they have a bad number, guess what? They don't try and squeeze it in there. So that's what I learned a lot from this John Sinclair. He's actually Taylor's coach now, extremely knowledgeable, was just the course management side of things. And when I was playing really well, I was doing that stuff. I was just implementing it. I knew if I didn't have a good number, this is what I was going to do with my iron shot. And I can think back to countless amount of times where I've made mistakes where the pin's in the back, I got, 175, whatever it is. I'm like, I could probably squeeze a little 7 iron in there, and get it back there. It's like, dude, you just smoke an 8. If it's 20 feet short, you just 2-putt. You don't realize how much the pros are doing it. And that's the cool thing about caddying and being out there, is seeing how these guys manage their games. Is they are so calculated. I will say most of them now have an analytics team that is telling them what to do and what shot and where you're supposed to hit it before they even tee off. They already know what club they're hitting. They know what the mathematical play is. So, for the and then like back to like the technique side of it, is irons is controlling your start line, right? So like a good drill, like you said, is the alignment stick. I mean, you want to just be peppering that thing right at it. And then the other thing is know your shot shape. So if you fade your irons and that's what you're comfortable with, hit a fade. Guess what? If the pin's front left, you just maybe stay away from that one. If you're a drawer and the pin's front right, Okay. You just have to play it left. Because I see even great players, they try and manipulate their tendencies to try and hit the perfect shot. For me, I've always been a little bit of a drawer of my irons. And whenever I tried to fade them, it'd get me into trouble.
Hmm.
And that goes back to the course management thing of like, hey, guess what? Middle of the green here is a great shot.
Yeah.
So
And see, this
it's
is why we need to talk to somebody like you who's played at the pro level, who's shot insanely low scores, who's seen guys who are, top 20 players in the world. Like we need to hear this, because I think a lot of people think they need to be perfect into greens, or like you
that's
said,
what
they
I'm
got to.
saying. Yeah, no,
It's not the
absolutely not. Like
reality.
the guy won the golf tournament and he aimed at 7 pins.
It's crazy. 10% of the pins he was going after.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking, maybe he's aiming 10 feet right, 12 feet right, but like he wasn't like just green light going at it. And keep in mind, these pins are also very tucked. But if you have an uncomfortable yardage, I mean, obviously the technical side and flushing, hitting the right shot, and because you're still going to make mistakes. It's not like, okay, the pin's left and you're never ever going to miss it left. But give yourself a chance at least to not, compound the error, right? It's like, okay, aim in the middle of the green. You know what I mean? And like, I heard a story from it was Billy Casper. He's playing at Pebble Beach. He was a major winner from San Diego, actually.
Yeah,
He birdies
legend.
like the first. He was playing with my college coach Dwayne Knight, who's also a legend of golf and teaching, coach for I don't know 30 some odd years. Billy Casper birdies the first 4 holes and he hits it to like 3-4 feet, literally every hole. And my coach goes to him, he goes, great start. Like, it's really impressive. And Billy just kind of laughs. He goes, yeah, missed all 4 of those shots. Because he wasn't aiming there and he just kept hitting it to gimme. And he just tips the cap, thank you very much. And that just kind of shows you that sometimes you'll make mistakes and it'll work out well. But if your lines are wrong, then you're all messed up. And it's something I have to remind myself too, because I just see flag stick, flag stick, flag stick. And that's what amateurs see as well. And you have to realize that the average from 100 yards on tour, I don't know what it is now, but it's no better than, I think 15 feet. Think about that. You're thinking that they're just in there dialing it in, 5-6 feet every time. You have to manage your expectations. Now you take a 5 handicap, they don't understand that a good shot is on the green 25 feet.
Yeah.
They just want to go at the flagstick. So I think iron game is a lot of course management for most people. And just, you have to, the biggest thing is obviously controlling your distances and understanding your shot shape. Kenny Perry, one of the, greats of all time, just giant slinging hook, almost won the Masters, just hooking it around the place. And, there's a lot of fades. So he just knew that, okay, the pin's on the front right. I'm either going to take this on and draw it over the pond, or I'm just going to hit it in the middle of the green. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to do it.
And I think we spoke to somebody else about this. They talked about with irons, it's more about repeatability of distance, hitting your number, and then
Correct. That's
you're
exactly.
calling out. Like, it's a mindfulness towards, like, I see a lot of players when we go out there, it's just sometimes they're not even aware of how far do I have into the hole. Like, I think I'm 170, I could be 180. There's no, I guess, focus around like, okay, what's the distance? Where am I aiming?
And what 160 at 7 a.m. is going to play a lot different than 160 at 1 in the afternoon when it's 12 degrees hotter. Bryson went as far as detailed as spraying his golf ball with water on it to see what the numbers were and the moisture. These guys are so calculated. I'm not saying you have to go that crazy, but you have to understand how far the ball is going to go. It's like you're into the wind 15 miles an hour. If you hit one high and spinny, your 9 irons, from 140 ain't getting there. It's like just 3-finger little, trap 8 iron. So controlling the trajectory, figuring out how far it's going to go. And obviously you're going to make mistakes. Like, okay, it's 150. I think it's playing 62, okay, I guess the wind calmed down. And a lot of times, like I was playing yesterday on 16, I think the number was 49, playing 40 downhill. And, I hit this little, 3/4 wedge and I hit it and I go, oh, that's gin. The wind switches, it, flies 30 feet long. And I'm, what are you going to do? But you have to just at least get a number in your head of what it's playing. And then you go from there. And then you figure out, okay, what shot am I going to hit? What trajectory? And where am I aiming? And those are
Yeah.
your kind of checklist. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with technique because everyone has their own game and own swing. And I'm not like an instructor per se, but I can definitely share some insight into how these guys manage their games. And I mean, they even when they're playing bad, they shoot 68, 69 because they know how to manage it. They whiff one right, all right, easy up and down. They miss on the left side, they can't get up and down. Like I was saying on 17, it's like, and you're going to hit the bad, the chunk or the thin or whatever it is occasionally, but at least minimize your dispersions, right? So there's my steal.
No, and honestly, Red, like I think that's a huge separator. Like take out technique because, like you said, you can have a 5 handicap that with the right course management approach, like you could take down to a scratch. And like I'll see it all the time. It's somebody maybe got lasers the pin and it's 140 and it's a front pin and exactly like you said, okay, I hit my top register pitching wedge 140. Okay, I'm going to hit a wedge, but it's not factored in that it's 5 yards uphill and it's a little bit into the wind and it's a front pin. And then it's like all of a sudden that 140 shot actually turned into, hey, I need to hit this 155 to give myself a bit of buffer.
And nobody's perfect. I mean, I still make mistakes too, but the cool thing I got to see was years of caddying on tour is, how these guys do it and, how they manage their games, because it's so calculated. Everything is a math thing. It's not just like you said, it's not just 140. Okay. You really have to think deep and give yourself a chance. And then it's like, okay, I think it's playing 153 or 150. Okay. Now we're going to commit to that number. Okay. If you go long or you miss it, whatever, at least know that you have the right game plan to what you're doing. Because if you're and then they get pissed, they flush it right at the pin, they give it the twirl, they're all tap in birdie, and then it lands short and rolls down into the bunker. And they're like, what, and then they lose their mind. Like, I just hit 2 great shots. Well, what the hell? It's like, well, yeah, but you didn't factor in all these things, and you're going to hit great shots and they're going to end up trash. They're going to end up in the water. They're going to end up here. That's golf though. It's a game of misses. Nicholas said it years ago. I'd be happy if I hit 2 shots exactly the way I wanted to all around. We're talking about one of the greatest of all time, So you're literally you're playing a game of misses. So allow yourself that comfortability. And people's expectations are too high, and I do it too. Like I'll have 110 yards and I'll hit it to 15 feet and I'm like, you suck, this, that, whatever. It's like, guess what? That's pretty good. So
yeah, I think you called it out there. People could benefit from going in with more of a game plan. Like do some calculations before you hit the ball. Make sure that you're not too aggressive if the pin's tucked. Like center of the green, like you said, on most holes for the recreational player is a very good shot. Like you're not going to make a big number.
We had a rule in college. 9 iron or less, you could aim at the pin. That was kind of like our mantra at UNLV, which sounds crazy. And you could even go stretch it down to pitching wedge or gap. And that was what they were trying to instill because, there's all these strokes gained categories now. And like that was when that stuff was kind of getting going. But it's like, you don't realize that a 9 iron in the middle of the green here or 8 iron right here is like you're gaining shots in the field. Instead of, I'm going to take on the hero shot and try and nip it into this front right pin and hit it to 8 feet. It's like, okay, just take the 25-footer. It's an auto par, maybe birdie. The more looks you give yourself, the better, the less stressed you're going to be. And there is a little bit of a momentum thing. You keep knocking on the green, giving yourself a look. At some point, it feels good to have birdie putts instead of the average guy scrambling. There's a hole at my course here in Scottsdale, Mesa Country Club. The second hole is like, this back of the screen is like the size of this desk. I mean, it's literally it's a finger, and you're talking like a 205 shot. And I see all the boys, they get up there, they're 5-4 iron, they're thinking they're going to flag it in there. I go, you would literally have to hit your Sunday's best of all time to hit it in that portion. And if you don't hit it in the portion, you're making bogey or double. I mean, this green is so tiny and fast, and then I just go up there and I'm like, okay, 205. Okay, I'm going to hit a 190 shot. I'm going to try and smash a 7. And if it's on the front, middle, whatever, I'm gaining shots in the field, and I watch these guys, some of them are scratches, +1s, whatever it is. And they're going after these pins. And I'm just like, you guys have like, what are you doing? I mean, I even the greatest players in the world aren't going to hit it in that back portion, and I've tried to tell them, like, you could bring Rory out here. And I bet you if this was a tournament, he would not hit one ball past the middle of the screen, literally, you know. So it's like that pin's not even there. Like, just pretend that it's not there. You're just gonna, knock it on the green, and if you miss the green, that's fine. Try and get up and down. But if you're pin high on that hole, you cannot, like, you're gonna get 1 out of 20 balls up and down, and that's what they don't understand. So you're losing shots there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is just so good because we're not talking about technique here at all. It's just you can go out and put this into play tomorrow. And I even heard Tiger say once he makes aggressive swings to conservative targets. Like, it's not about
controlled aggression.
Tentatively.
Controlled aggression. Yeah. Yep.
So I think you could still swing with that same intention and commitment on those lines that you picked. Let's just pick better. Let's just pick better targets.
And guess what? You're going to still hit bad shots and you're going to make mistakes, and everyone does it. It's like no one's perfect, the best in the world. But if I promise anybody listening, like, if you are a little more conservative and just try and eliminate those things, those little mental errors, your scores are going to go down. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when I was playing my best golf as a pro, that's how I was playing, and I catch myself now even making these little mistakes, and you just kind of have to reset. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? Think about it, break it down. Where's the wind? How far is it playing? And then you hit your shot, and then you live with the result. But if you're just like, 205, I'm going to try and squeeze a 5 in there, a little cut, whatever, and you flush it and it, does not good, then you're just throwing shots away,
Yeah.
So, like I said, though, the irons, you're going to know your distance, trajectory, and what your tendency is. And if you're a fader, just keep playing the fade. That would be my advice. And if you draw the ball, keep playing the draw, because I see so many guys that the pin's front right and they go, I have to fade this 7 iron. It has to cut in there. It's like, no, you don't. Start your ball at the pin and draw it to the middle of the green,
Yeah.
Or if the pin's on the left, start your fade at the pin and move it to the right of the green. Like, you shouldn't be going after pins with 6s and 7 irons. It's just not a thing. So
I love it, man. And honestly, like, just to relate my own experience from this past summer, like, I recently started using like the Bushnell app on my phone. And so it's like a digital yardage book. So I'm in the fairway and I know exactly, I'll use my Bushnell first to click on the number, and I'll see, okay, this is the actual number to the pin. But then I see on this Bushnell app, what's front, what's middle, what's back. And I read this article that showed like the green and reg percentage for the pro and amateur alike goes way down when the pin's at the front, like relative to when the pin's at the back. People hit way more greens when the pin's at the back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So when I would see this number, if it's 140 front, exactly like we said before, that might be the upper register of a pitching wedge for me. But I'm going to play the 9 iron because the real number is 150. And if I miss it a little bit, like you've got a 15 footer beyond the hole, and if I flush it, I've got a 30 footer.
Yeah, you're playing a game, a game of misses, and that's just the reality of it. It's like, how often do you get on hit a shot where it's like, oh my God, that's absolutely perfect. It flew perfect. It landed perfect. It's like, it does not happen often, So if your course management is at least dialed in, then, and like I said, I still make these mistakes too, but the more you can minimize them, the better. Because sometimes you misjudge the wind and sometimes you mishit it and little things like that. But if your game plan is solid, and you have an idea of what you're going to do, and you're committed to that right game plan, your ceiling was way higher, in my opinion. So that would be, I think that Jason Day little tidbit that I shared was super cool for me, because I'm like, this guy won the tournament and literally aimed at 7 pins. Like,
former world number one.
And it's cool. John had the yardage book. He was number 1 at the time. He had the yardage book. He had like circles of where he was going to hit it, like every single one of them. Like, it had whatever his caddy or him, whoever drew it. So, this is course management. So we're going to wedges now.
I think what we want to do now is let's just get into the 19th hole section. I'm going to start giving you just some eclectic mix of questions. I want to get into some of your past stories and experiences too. I think the drivers and iron, I think that's perfect. Just,
you don't want to hear about my C and D game?
Yeah, you know what? We'll leave the putting for the what not to do podcast. We want to.
Yeah, I'll be back on that one later.
Let's just. I always throw this question out, Red, to our guests. What's the best piece of golf advice you ever received?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
or one of the best? Doesn't need to be the best, but what's something that you recall as being like, that was really, really good advice?
Well, put me in the blender here. Give me a sec. Man, advice. I mean, I read a quote the other day that I thought was pretty cool.
Share it.
Homa said, we're one shot away from quitting the game, and we're one shot away from unlocking everything, basically. So like, just basically saying like, it can turn at any moment and you can find something. And what's cool is like, the golf ball doesn't know who you are or what you're doing or what the situation is. It doesn't know if you're on the 18th hole at Augusta with a 2-shot lead, or you're, playing with your boys in Toronto, for $5. Like, the golf ball doesn't know. And I think that quote was cool because I was, kind of in the dumps. I'm like, I just, wasn't feeling great. I'm like, it's true though. You're literally one shot away from everything clicking and all of a sudden things going back together. That was more of like a quote. Advice. I mean, I've gotten so many tidbits. Like, I'm just trying to think of something that's really stuck out to me in my head. I don't know. What's your best advice? I'm curious. Is something that you've heard.
Yeah, well,
Putting you on the spot.
No one's thrown it back to me. I think for me, and I talked about this with Chandler before, when I learned that golf was a target game versus a swing club game, I think that was my biggest piece of advice that I got, and that was just like secondhand advice from my dad through about George Knudson gave it to him, and like you having seen me in my technical days where I was so swing obsessed, like it got ugly there, like, but the ball striking got ugly, right? But when I learned that, hey, I need to pick targets and swing towards these targets, and similar, like the freedom that you talked about with the driver, like my ball striking is a strength now.
Yeah, so now I can kind of come up with something, and it actually comes from my dad, and it's also a similar quote, but it's like, golf's not a game of perfect, right? And then you see, and this is kind of cool for amateurs, whoever it is. There is so many ways to score the golf ball and to play. I mean, you look at every swing on tour; they're all unique. And to touch your technical side, and I've been on the technical side a little bit too much also at times, but you have to just free up and like, just let your swing, if you can repeat something and do it every time and hit it well, like, it doesn't even matter. Like, to be honest with you, I don't really look at my swing on camera that much. Not that I have a funky move or anything, but I'm like, I just flew at 320 with a 3-yard fade. Why would I want to watch that on video? I know where it's going,
Yeah.
And I see people that are just like, well, I'm just going to shallow it a little bit more and a little bit under here. And then, that was like you in high school, but golf really isn't a game of perfect, right? And that touches to the course management stuff of the miss hitting and, just kind of playing your percentages. It's a game of misses, right? It's literally a game of misses. Like, we're trying to just manage every shot as best as we can, and commit to everything. And that would kind of be my mantra, or advice that I've gotten that kind of has stuck with me. Obviously, that quote from Homo was really cool. That comes from a guy, and it's funny. Taylor played with him. He was 9 holes from going back to first stage of Q School. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 6, 5, maybe 5 years ago.
18,
he
I
shoots
think.
5. He shoots 30 on the back 9 in Portland to, I believe it was to make the cut in Portland. And then he parlayed that into whatever he needed to finish. And now he's 7 in the world, I think. So
that's crazy.
I think that's why that quote resonates with him, because he's like, you're one swing away from all of this changing. Like, you just don't know. And that's what's so cool about it. And like, I see Taylor, and he definitely has a unique move, but I mean, man, this guy, he has the confidence in his swing. He believes in what he's doing, and he spent the time to hone in on it. And yeah, it's not the most aesthetically, you're not like, oh, wow, this isn't an Adam Scott or whatever it is. But if you can get the ball in the hole consistently, and how your ball's going to fly, that'd be my advice to the people, listening. It's like, there's so many ways to do it. There's literally, there's just, Dave Stockton, he says, when you sign your signature, as the putting coach, Dave Stockton. You sign your signature. Do you think about how you sign it? No, you just react and do it. And that's what he says with like a putting stroke, and I can relate to the golf swing. You just do it, right? You have to try and not think. And I think that's a cool thing with putting is like you just go up there and be reactive. Like and it's the same thing with the swing. Like react to it instead of, and when you're on the golf course, I feel like you should be more in tune to the course management stuff and the shot, and kind of leave if you want to swing thought, it's fine, but leave all the crazy shallowing face, this, that. Like, I mean, I see people over the ball for like 30 seconds and I'm like, this guy has more thoughts than anybody. Like, I mean, it's like, there's no chance this is going to go raise. Like, all right, keep my arm straight here. I want to drop it here and I'm going to release it. And then I'm like, okay, good luck. I play with a buddy here. He's about a 14 and he's over the ball. And I'm like, I can only imagine what's going on in this guy's head right now. I'm like, this is going to be rough. So that would be kind of my advice or, best thought I've gotten, I think.
I love it. I just, and knowing you well, like that's how you play golf. And I always admired that about you. Like you went out there and you played the game. Like I was playing golf swing and I was stuck in the mud and I watched you play golf. Right. And to me, it was so refreshing. Right. Like, and so I think over the years, employing what you just said, like has served me really well. I want to ask you something. I mean, you're a pro yourself. You've played at an extremely high level and you've spent so much time around PGA Tour players. Like, what is something that Joes like myself, like we don't see or we can't appreciate, like watching on TV? What is something they do that I just don't see?
Well, I mean, I don't think people understand the amount of time that these guys put into it. I think, Taylor being probably my best friend I have and being around him so much. I mean, you're talking about a guy that he ran out of golf balls. He couldn't break 80 in college at one point. I mean, literally ran out of golf balls. 56 now, a 15th FedEx. This guy just worked his butt off. I mean, and there are all, like, this is the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, putting till dark, hitting balls on the TrackMan for 8-9 hours. It is another level. And, I think golf is, kind of the stigma of it's just kind of an old fat man sport. And, these guys just kind of roll out of bed and whatever. I was caddying at the US Open at Torrey Pines for Taylor in 2021. Or was it? 2021. And I go into the gym in La Jolla, obviously down the street from Torrey. And who's in there? They teed off at like 1:15. I think they might have been playing together. We had Brooks Koepka and we had Dustin Johnson. And these guys are getting in a lift at like 10:30, before their tee times. And I feel like the average person doesn't realize the amount of time and energy that these guys put into their game. Taylor, when he's home, he's literally there. He gets to the course 8 or 9. He's there till it's dark. I mean, obviously you have a little lunch, you do whatever. And I think Tiger was the one that really brought that on. It's like, this is how I'm going to get to the next level. And I think that's something that the people at home don't realize, the amount of time that they do. I mean, Taylor and Kurt, I mean, I see them both. They'll literally sit on TrackMan and do these combines, which is like, it says 74 yards, 78, 91, and it gives you like a score, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll just sit there until they get a certain score. And I'm just like, my hands would be bleeding. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, but they are so dedicated and committed to getting better. And it shows up. It literally shows up. Yeah. I remember Taylor missed, I think, the first 2 years at Q School. And he was playing awesome going into the third year when he finally got through. And he goes out, wins first stage by 4, wins second stage by 3. I mean, he's just lapping the field. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, what's gotten? He goes, it feels easy. I've been practicing for 12 hours a day. So I just, I roll out to the course and it just feels like any other movement, it doesn't change for them. Like, it's just natural. Like, they have an 85-yard shot and they're just like, okay, well, I've done this 800 times, like, it's just like the NBA guys practicing their free throws. It doesn't matter that the game, game 7 of the NBA finals, it doesn't matter they're on the 18th hole at the US Open. They have it so dialed in, and that's why they're able to do it, and I don't know if anybody realizes that. I'm sure to a certain extent, And then they're just their ability to score the golf ball is the other thing I don't think people understand. I mean, there's days where, I caddy for Taylor. I'm like, this guy's literally hitting it like an 8 handicap, and he just shot 67. I'm like, this is disgusting. I mean, he hit 2 good shots all day, and he's 5 under. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
This is why I cannot compete with you. You are too good. If I hit it in the spots you did today, I'd be 7 over at the turn, and I would have withdrawn. Another example: U.S. Open first round at Torrey Pines. This guy hit 5 greens, shot 1 under par.
Yeah, that's insane.
At Torrey Pines. And I'm just like, this is incredible. And that goes back to what I was talking about, the course management, is they know how to miss it in the right spots. And we had a game plan, I was talking him through it, whatever, and he just executed it. It's like, we're in the right rough, the pins, here. We're going to just try and leave it here and try and 2-putt. And that talks about not being perfect, leaving it in the right spots. So I think it's the amount of time these guys put in and how dedicated they are. I'm sure people saw a little bit more of that with the full swing. I don't know. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did. I didn't love it as much as some other folks, but I think it's because I'm a sicko and I follow it like all year anyway.
Yeah, and I think that was more so just for like a non-golf person, perhaps.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of entertaining. Anyways, I think people saw a little bit more of that, aspect with the gym and the fitness, whatever. But I mean, these guys they're putting the time in, and they are just, you don't realize how good they are at scoring the ball. They're short game and putting. I mean, they don't miss inside of 5 feet. I mean, they'll miss maybe one every, couple rounds. Whereas you take Joe Schmo, even myself, I might miss 2 or 3 a round.
Yeah.
And like even a decent putter, like you think their level of short game and wedges is what separates them, because you see some of these guys ball striking, and I'll say it myself. Like I watch him hit it, and I'm like, I hit it way better than this guy.
Yeah.
And I got a name on the back of my back here. I got a bib on, and he's out here made 5.7 million this year. I'm literally thinking to myself, like, how is this possible? Look at this golf swing. This ain't pretty. This ain't nice. But they know they manage their games, and I think that's kind of undersold, like how good they are inside of 100 yards. And I think my advice for average guy, that's where the game is. That's the bread and butter right there. If you get good inside of 100 yards, 125, your golf game is just going to go way down. Back to the caddying thing. We got like 84 yards. Taylor grabs a 60, hits it. He goes, no, that's a birdie. I mean, it literally, he knows exactly how it's going to, like, as soon as he hits it, they literally know. They're all like that. I mean, they don't vocally say it. He's kind of special in that way. He likes to, talk shit, but so good at controlling their wedges and like I said, scoring the ball. So I think those are the 2 things, the time and how good they are with their wedges and their putting, because you just see them make every single 5-6 footer pretty much every time. And that's what separates them for sure. They're some of them really, to be honest with you, you're talking, 75 to 150, those guys in the ball striking, they're obviously great, but it's not like you're not super impressed. You'd be like, okay, yeah, he hits it nice. But like, does he hit it abstractly better than you? Probably not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being honest. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
Then you get into the top level and it's like, okay, this guy is next level. You get the Roms, you get the Rorys, you get this, the JTs. I mean, you look at a guy like Spieth, he kind of just scrapes it around and hits a couple of great shots and, wins the tournament. So.
And honestly, dude, so I went to the Farmers and also the Genesis this year with my old man, and we had the exact same takeaways from what you're saying in terms of like the ball striking for a lot of the average guys. We weren't blown away by. We just kind of looked at it and we're like, yeah, I mean, that's somewhat relatable. Like, dispersion's definitely tighter, but nothing that blew us out of the water. But then we'd watch them miss greens, and there'd be 3 guys in the group, and we go, what's the over under here? Like, are they going to be, if 3 guys miss the green, are they one over? Are they even?
They're so good at chipping and putting. I mean,
so tidy.
I think Scheffler's probably one of the best in the world right now around the greens. I mean, the guy chips in every time I look, he's chipping in. I mean, Spieth, same thing. It's like, yeah, they're allowed to hit bad shots because they just get up and down. Like I said, I mean, I watch these guys. They literally look like they shot 78 and they go, 69. I'm like, 69. I go, how many greens did you hit?
Yeah.
And that's what separates them, from a player like myself, player like you. is their wedge game and their putting, and people just think they like, oh, these guys just flush it, they just stripe it. Guess what? They're like all of us. They hit it shitty some days. Every single one of them. No one's that good. I mean, even Tiger got a little squirrely off the tee with the driver, even in his heyday. But
Yeah.
it didn't matter because he just punches it out to 60 yards, wedge it to 5 feet. Thank you. That's a par. So that would be my biggest take from that.
No, that's such a good call out, Red. Like for our listeners, spend more time on the short game, and you said it earlier, level set your expectations. Like if you're not putting in the time and you're just going out to play once a week, like make sure the expectations and your strategies in line with the amount of time that you're committing to your game.
For sure. And like that's, I try and set myself at a very high standard, and I should, but I shouldn't because I don't spend the time. I'm not on the wedge practice area, for a couple hours a day. I don't really practice. So don't be hard on yourself. If you have 70 yards and you skull one, or you know what I mean? Like there's level of, what you get in, what you return. And for these guys, they put in so much work that no one sees. That makes them great.
I want to be mindful of time here, Red, but real quick, just give me some quick hitter answers here. Like you're a guy we outlined in the intro, like you've shot 11 under 61, 10 under 62, some crazy low scores. Like, is that a skill that you always had, like the ability to take it low, or is that something that you've learned over time?
Something that just kind of happened. I remember having a little bit of a mental block at one point when I was going low, and Alex Cejka, who's a longtime friend, he's from Germany. I've caddied for a little bit. I remember asking when I was younger, it's like, every time I turn at like 3 or 4 under, I seem to hit the brakes. And he just kind of was like, well, dude, you have to somehow just erase, regardless if you're 3 or 4 under or 3 or 4 over, you're on a new hole. Like it's a new mission, new starting point. And when I would get into a groove, I haven't gone low very recently. I've been a little bit out of the groove, but when you're in that groove, it just feels, the hole looks, it looks giant. And not everyone's going to get into that zone or flow or whatever you want to call it. But if you can just, kind of set up like, okay, new hole, you just kind of erase everything that's happened. That can kind of help you to try and go lower. And it's hard to be like, oh man, course record. Like, don't get me wrong. That's like obviously in the back of your head. And the great players are able to, cancel that out and just, it's not something you can really teach, I don't think,
Gotcha. You just have to do it enough times to get comfortable in that position.
To break down the door, basically. And I've choked off records before. Trust me. It's you're definitely uncomfortable for sure. There's no denying it. And the greats just, they have no problem with it. They just embrace it.
Yeah, I mean that's why, like you said, they got their name on their bag. So, I guess question here, like knowing Kurt Kitayama, Taylor Montgomery so personally, like the line to make it on tour is so thin. You mentioned their work ethic. Is there anything else that allowed these two guys to like separate themselves from all the other guys that play D1 college golf that try to make it?
Mentally, they are just so much stronger than a lot of people, and even myself. And that's part of the reason I shut it down, because I just was like, these guys just they're abnormal. They have a little flick switch in their brain that it doesn't matter if there's 800 cameras on them or that there's 8,000 fans. They know how to perform, and you have to be able to be like a little bit. I don't want to say off in a derogatory way, but like able to just turn the flick off and just go. Work ethic, I think, helps. When you work that hard, you expect great things. You expect to succeed. You expect to perform. And those two, they busted their ass. I mean, in college, and Kurt especially, and I mean both of them. But Kurt would always call me freshman, sophomore year, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm at home." He goes, "Why aren't you practicing?" I'm like, "I have a paper." He goes, "No, you don't." He goes, "No, you don't. Get out here. Get out here." Okay, fine. And he was trying to push everybody to get to his level, and he wasn't. He was our best player, but it wasn't like he was an All-American or anything. Obviously, very good. I think he was like all conference or whatever. But he was always pushing. And like Taylor, same thing. Just pushing, trying to get to the next level, trying to get the next level. And it's mental for sure. To in a short answer, it's mental, but I think some of the mental side comes from working hard. So
Gotcha. And last question before we let you go here, Red. You've seen some crazy stuff on the golf course. Give me one of the craziest things you've seen on the course, and feel free to leave out any names so we don't incriminate anybody here.
oh man, craziest thing. I mean, being in Vegas for all those years, I saw a lot of crazy things at Shadow Creek. I'll tell a good Taylor story just to kind of summarize how confident and how awesome he is in these situations. But we were playing with Bobby Baldwin, was really high up at he's just like a mogul of MGM, vice president. I'm not sure his title now, but very high up in Vegas. And another one of our buddies, Ben Lamb, who's elite poker player, one of the top in the world. And this was I believe it was in college or just after. So we don't have much money, to our name. So we're scrambling a little bit. I think I'm playing them like 200 or 300 a hole. It was like we were playing our ball versus their scramble or something. And they were, using Vaseline on the club, whatever, the whole deal. Anyways, we get to the last hole and got a 10-footer, a little slider left to righter. And I'm already in for par. I'm happy. I think I won like $200. I'm, jumping around, celebrating. Taylor's got this, he's got this 10-footer, and I believe it was for 3,000. He was up 3,000 on him at the time, and he's over the putt, and he goes, "You guys want odds on this?" And Bobby Baldwin goes, "Yeah, you got it." And Ben, knowing that he's just the sicko with the putter, goes, "No, I don't know, no bet." And then Bobby goes, "Quit being a bitch. Like we're taking the action." Taylor walks over. He goes, "All right, I warned you." He hits it and just walks it in dead center. I mean, and I tell that story, but he's done this multiple times where I'm just perplexed by his ability. $3,000 at the time. I mean, that has to be at least 10% of his net worth right there at that moment.
100%.
I don't know his exact status. I mean, we were 22 years old or whatever it was. We're grinding the mini tours. You win one of those, you win 5 Gs. You're like, and he's just casually rolling in a 10-footer for 3,000. And that's why I always told you, I go, this guy is going to be something special, because never in a million years would I dream of ever making that wager. And that's what makes him special, that he had the nerves, or basically the balls to do that. And he just walks it right in the middle. And I've seen him do it multiple times, but I just thought that was pretty cool, because that was at a time where we really didn't have that much money. And he had, he had the guts to say, you know what? Yeah, I'll take the action. And of course he just rolls it right in the middle. And I just look at him, I'm just shaking my head, and he's just laughing because he just knows how good he is. So
that's amazing, man. Like those guys, like Kurt, Taylor, like those guys are not afraid of the moment. Like when I'm in a situation that matters, I'm visibly nervous. Like I feel like I'm going to throw up inside. I'm nervous.
That's what I'm saying, though. There's an abnormal switch to that.
Yeah.
That a lot of people, like, you either have it or you don't, or somehow you create it. And both of those guys do. It doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't matter if he's 7 under through 6 at the Masters. Like, he's just going to keep on going. Like, there's a saying that you either got to be really smart or like really dumb. Like, you look at a Dustin where he's just like, like, and that's who Taylor kind of reminds me of. He just kind of plots his way around, doesn't really get too high, doesn't get too low, like even look at Kurt. He hit 2 balls out of bounds.
Yeah.
Guy still wins the golf tournament. The guy is so tough mentally. Like, who else? I mean, how many guys are leading Bay Hill, never won on tour, make triple, and, don't just rattle and fall apart and shoot 42 on the back. He does, and It's cool. It's Saturday night. He was saying, like, I'm mentally tough. Like, I don't give up. I don't give in. And that goes back to, like, every hole is just kind of a new battle. It's like a new mission. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy things at Shadow Creek, but I think that was a pretty cool story. I've seen him do that a few times where he offers basically even money on a 10-footer, and just never has he missed. There's not one person in the world I want to clutch putt. He's the guy. So
it's built different.
Built different for sure. Yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch.
Well, Red, I could chat your ear off for 3-4 hours here, but I know want to be mindful of your time. So
For
can't thank
sure.
you enough, dude, for coming on and just sharing the insights that I don't think we're gonna get as just the average recreational player. Like you've seen stuff and are aware of stuff that we don't see at our level. So like it's an honor to have you on and great to catch
No,
up with you,
thanks for
man.
having me. It's good to, I talk through all this stuff. It kind of gives me a reminder of, my own game and what I need to be focusing on. And I'm glad I can, try and share some of my knowledge. And even if you just get a little tidbit of whatever it is, it's great. But yeah, it's always fun catching up.
Likewise, man. And just before we let out, what I thought was so neat about what you shared was a lot of these things were not technical in nature. They're insights that somebody at any level can apply to their game. You could be a scratch, you could be a 10, you could be a 20, and you can go out and take some of those nuggets that you shared and start putting them into play. And I think that's gold, man. So like, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like I said, the course management things, obviously very important. A lot of people work a 9 to 5, have wife, kids, family. They don't have time to practice, So, but if you do have time, apply it to the right areas, and focus on improving, the short game putting, course management, and you'll go down in handicap. There's no, and I need to do the same myself. I got to practice what I preach, but the technique side is just very, it's a finicky thing because everyone's a little bit different. And I'm not an instructor or anything, but I've been around the best players in the world for years. I've seen them. I know them. I know what they do. I know how they practice. I know all their little ins and outs. So I'm fortunate to have this information, and I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, can't thank you enough, man. And for those of you that want to follow Red, do you have social? Do you have anything that you want to share if people are interested in
Yeah,
keeping up with you?
just Instagram, Redford_Bobbitt. That's what it is. That's what I got.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, brother. And yeah, looking forward to maybe doing this again down the road as well.
Absolutely. Yep, sounds great.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Behind the Brim. We'll be releasing podcasts every Monday. And if you want more golf content, follow us on social at BehindTheBrim_golf on both Instagram and TikTok. Hope you have a great week.